Five things. Five things every man who grew up without a father needs to know. In my time, I've spoken to so many men, and it's like, I didn't have my dad around. What did I miss? What do I need to know? Whatever the circumstances, whether he passed away, your dad was thrown out, walked out, dragged off in cuffs, or was physically present but emotionally missing in action, it leaves a mark. Today, we're going to have a little delve into that situation, and I'm going to speak about what I learned from my experiences, the experiences of men around me, and from life in general. But before we get into that, do me a favor, share this video with someone you know needs it. If you know somebody who's grown up without their father, or has daddy issues, or ain't quite moving in the right masculine energy, this may be the video that helps to give them a little bit of perspective on what's going on. So personally, I grew up in an environment where very few of us had active fathers. And the more I think about our upbringing and the outcomes that me and many of the people I grew up around have, I can see how a lot of the events that took place came to pass in the first place. The absence of a positive masculine example creates space for negative influences to set in and create a big impact. When the father isn't present, the biggest thing missing is a real life example of manhood. And the boy doesn't get to see how a man presents, how he handles stress, how he treats his woman, how he deals with his anger, or carries himself in day to day life. This means the child is left to figure all of these kind of things out by himself, sometimes getting it very wrong in the process. Around the time we hit puberty, we set off on a journey of self exploration. The world is our oyster, and with our newfound surge of testosterone, we step out into the big wide world hoping to see what it has to offer us. Without that much needed guidance, some of us end up going through varying extremes, either taking mad risks or the complete opposite, avoiding anything at all that seems risky, limiting ourselves to a life that we never truly get to know about ourselves or what we're capable of as a result. Some struggle with confidence, discipline, and self worth. Others end up in circles where negativity and lawlessness are the norm. Without intervention, it can lead to barriers to education, getting into crime, substance abuse, or battling with mental health, as some of us just struggle to navigate life without direction and guidance. Whether we choose to openly admit it or not, a lot of men walk around carrying a void, an almost undescribable feeling that something's missing. Well, here's the thing, if you've ever felt the weight of this void, its pressure lowering your crown, adding tension on your shoulders, you know what I'm talking about. The good news is you don't have to stay stuck in that mindset. We can do something about it. Five things every man without a father needs to know. You might be sitting there thinking, well, boy, I grew up with my dad. Everything's so good over here. You may have a good idea of what these five things are, and maybe only a couple of them apply to you. But when the time comes, will you be able to pass them on to your children and break the cycles? First thing, you have to grieve the void. You have to grieve the void with other men. You can't just bury it and hope it disappears. If your father wasn't there, whether he left, passed away, or just never showed up emotionally, you have to grieve that void. And here's the key, you have to do it around other men. Not on a drunken night out or a session. Not in isolation, but in a real space. Something like a men's group, or, a couple of your close compadres, a brotherhood, a setting where discussion and healing is the focus. Why? Because pain that isn't acknowledged can't heal. A lot of men carry silent anger and sadness about their father, If that's you, find a way to get it out, talk about it, process it, and let it be witnessed. That's the first step to real healing. Two, you have to learn to father yourself. A father's role is to set standards, discipline, and structure, not to control or coerce you, but to bring out the best in yourself. When you grow up without that, you have to do it for yourself. You have to become your own father figure. That means asking yourself some important questions. What standards am I holding myself to? Am I pushing myself to be the best version of who I am? Am I disciplined in my life, or am I just drifting? A lot of men grew up without a father, having in a voice that's overly critical. Nothing's ever good enough. But instead of tearing yourself down, you have to learn to start building yourself up. Become the guide that you didn't have. Three, you have the right to be angry, but learn to channel it. Every son has the right to be angry at his father. And if your dad wasn't there, the anger's valid. But here's the problem. If no one teaches you how to handle it, you either explode or you shut down completely. A solid father teaches his son how to deal with his anger in a healthy way. He doesn't suppress it, and he doesn't let it turn into rampant violence. But if you didn't have that example, you might struggle with regulating it. What can you do? Find spaces where your anger can be expressed and understood. Said it before. Join a men's group. Hit the gym, work out. Learn emotional discipline. Anger isn't your enemy. How you handle it that matters. 4, a woman can't define your masculinity. A woman can't define what it means for you to be a man. Society pushes this idea that women hold the key to your masculinity, that their validation determines whether or not you're a real man. What's the trap? Many of us grew up in single parent households, not even aware that the standard to which we were being judged by in our youth was based upon a fictional character that our moms hadn't even met. Many of us have found our way into relationships where carrying the weight of this void has only managed to make things worse for us, confusing lust for love, nourishing our ego with the ability to bed multiple women as some kind of proof of worth, or getting involved in, relationships where it's symbiotic dependency, and we're mistaking that for a seemingly ideal spouse. A woman's actions can reflect how she feels about your masculinity, whether she respects you, trusts you, or feels safe around you. But no woman can give you your manhood. That has to come from within. My advice: stop looking to women to tell you whether or not you're a good man. Be a man that you'd respect first, and the right people will follow. 5, this is the big one. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. It's not your fault that your dad weren't there. It's not your fault that he may have made bad decisions, checked out, or never stepped up in the first place. That void, that pain, it's not your fault. But healing from it is your responsibility. Given the scenarios we've looked at previously, the absence of a positive masculine example created the void. But filling it and moving forward towards a happier life is your responsibility. You get to decide whether you stay stuck in that anger or whether you break the cycle. You get to decide whether you carry the weight of that void forever or whether you put it down. And if you've got kids, or you intend to have kids at some point in the future, you get to decide to be the role model that you didn't have. And remember, your actions, your conduct being watched. May not even be by your own kids. Could be nieces, nephews, or the neighbor's kid who looks up to you. You are part of the village, and either actively or passively, you will play a part in their upbringing. The youth will learn from their observances and interactions with you and take in what they see. At some point, you have to say, all right, I didn't have the example. I'm going to build myself into the man I need or needed. And that's where the real power lies. So, those are the 5 things I wish every man who grew up without a father figure knew. If this hit home for you, share it with somebody who needs it. Let's start breaking these cycles and stepping into the men we're supposed to be.